Welcome to another episode of Jenny's Chateau Farm. Following on from last week, where I introduced you to traditional French cognac production, this week I wanted to have a look at the other life of cognac. Because yes, cognac does indeed have a double life, a double identity, you might say. In France, cognac is often used in cooking to give taste to meats and sauces. Or, at the end of a fine meal, elegant diners may swirl it around in their glass and perhaps enjoy it with a cigar. But until recently, it was not much consumed in France, other than for cooking, as it was seen as somewhat old-fashioned, belonging to a world of old men and traditional, austere values. As such, it was mostly drunk neat, or perhaps with one ice cube. In the United States, on the other hand, which is by far the largest global consumer of cognac, among youth culture it has become one of the hippest drinks to consume, and has come to represent success, wealth, the debauchery of money, excess and extravagance. Whilst in France, it may flame slightly in traditional French cuisine, but in America, it ignites the worlds of the kings and queens of the party scene, and dances in cocktails in the most extravagant bars and clubs. But how did these seemingly opposite identities come about? How and why did cognac, created in sleepy, traditional, austere, rural French villages, become the most coveted choice of America's young, urban and extravagant hip-hop gangsters? To answer this question, we will need to delve back into the history of cognac, France and America, and their particular special relationship, and most especially the extremely loyal relationship between the African American community and the House of Hennessy. So, in reverse chronological order, our story begins with hip-hop culture's deep love affair and affiliation with cognac. Some of you may be familiar with Busta Rhymes' 2001 hit, Pass the Courvoisier, but that was just one of over 1,000 hip-hop songs that reference cognac in some way. And these are just a few more. This level of product endorsement is exceptional and cannot be bought. Clearly, this love affair between Hennessy and the African American community goes both ways, as Hennessy has honoured this loyal relationship by hiring African American brand ambassadors and honouring significant achievements, including in 2015, to celebrate its 250th anniversary, Hennessy names hip-hop artist Nas as their brand ambassador. In 2009, Hennessy releases a special commemorative bottle celebrating the presidency of Barack Obama, with proceeds going to the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, a fund that supports and represents nearly 300,000 students attending its 47 member schools that include public historically black colleges and universities. And in 1963, during the height of the US Civil Rights Movement, Hennessy hired 1948 bronze medal winning Olympian Herb Douglas as Vice President of Urban Market Development. As such, he was the third African American to reach the level of Vice President of a major national corporation, and he worked with them for more than 3 decades. By 2020, the Black American market was considered to be the most brand loyal, with Hennessy being the preferred brand. By some estimates, more than 2/3 of Hennessy sold in the United States is consumed by African Americans. What's more, this is no small market, as the Black American market is estimated to have a buying power of $1.4 trillion. In recent years, several rappers, including Ludacris, 50 Cent, and Jay-Z, have in turn invested into various cognac houses to launch their own brands of cognac. And in 2021, a single special edition bottle of Jay-Z's Doucet was sold at auction by Sotheby's for $52,000. Whilst clearly this special relationship is deep and lucrative, this part of the story only skims the surface. To look at why these artists chose cognac as their drink of choice in the first place, we need to go back further. After the war, and with the growth of the civil rights movement, magazines such as Ebony and Jet were founded to chronicle Black life and contributions, focusing on news, culture, and entertainment related to the African American community. Given the pervasive racism within mass media and advertising at the time, these two magazines worked to counter this and promoted images of successful middle-class African Americans enjoying the finer things of life. And who do you think was the first spirit brand to offer paid adverts in these magazines? Yes, you guessed it, Hennessy. And shortly after, several other cognac houses followed suit. This was in sharp contrast to American spirit brands such as bourbon and whiskey manufacturers, who were still using Confederate flags and Confederate soldiers in their advertising, despite the fact that these products were produced or even invented by Black Americans. Looking at these adverts, it is no wonder that given the option between buying locally made bourbon or whiskey or buying French-made cognac, many African Americans chose Hennessy. While such adverts would have had an influence on young rappers and their parents' generation, looking further back, what was it that made Hennessy decide to place such adverts in the first place? For that, you may be surprised to find out just how far back the relationship between Hennessy and African American culture stretches. During the Second World War, between 40,000 to 50,000 Black American servicemen served under French commanders, and many of them were stationed in the Cognac region. The fact that they were serving under French commanders is significant because their experiences under French command contrasted greatly with their experiences under American command. An example of the differing ways in which black servicemen were treated by the US and French military is the story of the African American Black Panthers of the 761st Tank Battalion, who completed their distinguished combat record by breaching Germany's Siegfried Line and crossing the Rhine in 1945. Towards the end of World War II, the Germans had created the Vichy Line in France in order to block the efforts of Western allies. The 761st Tank Battalion was sent to attack the Vichy Line with the idea of softening up the competition so that a white battalion could follow and break through with a victory. But in fact, the Black Battalion broke through and kept going, encircling Russian forces in Austria, a major feat. However, it seems white officers did not want the Black Battalion to receive the honour they deserved, as shamefully the men were later disbanded from the army so that they could never be honoured for their achievement. By 1945, 432 American service members had received the Medal of Honor for their gallantry in the face of the enemy during World War II, but not a single black man was among them. In contrast, however, France awarded 171 black American soldiers with their highest award for achievement, the Légion d'honneur. While serving under white American commanders, W.E. Du Bois summed up the treatment endured by black soldiers when he stated, "The American Negro soldier in France was treated with the same contempt and undemocratic spirit that the American Negro citizen is treated with in the United States." Under French command, however, relations between the French and their African American counterparts were generally good. French officers befriended African American troops and officers, and the non-commissioned officers treated them with courtesy and comradeship. As a result, most African American soldiers experienced a great deal more freedom in France than they did in the United States, either before or after the war. Though the French had their own racial issues, black Americans found the country devoid of Jim Crow segregation, and many dated French women. As such, during their downtime, they were able to relax, introduce the French to jazz and blues, were entertained by artists such as Josephine Baker and others, and enjoyed the cognac that was distributed freely by the thankful French people, who greatly appreciated all that the many American soldiers had done for them, including the African American servicemen. So it is perhaps no wonder that during this time, cognac's proud role as a symbol of gratitude freely given by the French people as a trophy honouring success, liberation and ecstatic celebration was cemented in black American culture and psyche. Furthermore, these were associations that were not easily forgotten when these same servicemen returned back to the United States, where again, despite their service, many black veterans experienced hostility, finding themselves subject to verbal abuse, assault, and even lynching. Speaking of Josephine Baker, during the war she joined the French resistance, was a spy for the Allies, helped to hide refugees, performed for the troops, became a lieutenant in the French Free Air Force, and was awarded 3 honours: the Croix de la Guerre, the Rosette de la Résistance, and the Chevalier de Légion d'Honneur, the highest order of merit for military and civilian action. In 1937, she had a cocktail named after her, made with her favourite spirit, cognac, of course, and in 1947 she bought Chateau de Milande in the southwest of France. So that's it, right? Surely this explains cognac's special relationship with the African American community, right? Well, yes, but in fact Hennessy's special relationship with African American civil rights leaders goes even further back to the years of Prohibition, the founding of Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, and the creation of the National Urban League. In 1906, William J. Schieffelin, a child of German immigrants, became president of his family's business, Schieffelin & Co., a leading pharmaceutical and liquor importing house in New York City. Schieffelin & Co. owned a factory in Lower Manhattan called the Williams Center. Through his work there, Schieffelin was made aware of the poor working conditions that African Americans were experiencing in New York City, and he looked to create an organization to fight this problem and to create publicity in order to make changes in the factory industry. In this capacity, in 1896, William Schieffelin had befriended Booker T. Washington, who was the founder of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. Booker T. Washington was an educator, a reformer, and the most influential black leader of his time. He preached a philosophy of self-help, racial solidarity, and accommodation. He urged black people to concentrate on elevating themselves through hard work and material prosperity. Through this friendship, Schieffelin joined the Tuskegee Institute's board of directors, and then encouraged his friends in the North, including wealthy industrialists and members of New York's high society, to support the Tuskegee Institute. The Institute, now a university, is the second oldest historically black college in Alabama. In 1910, Schieffelin hired George Edmund Haynes, a Yale graduate and the first black man to graduate with a PhD from Columbia School of Economics, to serve as the executive director of a new organization, which later became the National Urban League, a civil rights and urban advocacy organization that can now boast 90 affiliates serving 300 communities, providing direct services that impact and improve the lives of more than 2 million people nationwide. By 1919, the National Prohibition Act meant that the only way to legally obtain spirits in much of America was to have them prescribed as medicinal. As a result, Schieffelin & Co., which was already a 125-year-old drug wholesale company, soon found that Hennessy's cognac and Moet et Chandon's champagne were their two most prescribed curatives, and so he eventually gave up the pharmaceutical side of the business to pursue the much more lucrative drinks business. With his increased wealth as a cognac and champagne distributor, Schieffelin was able to increase his philanthropic work, and during a 1928 fundraising drive, Schieffelin organized a train ride from New York City to Tuskegee to encourage his friends to witness what this institute was all about. Some of the passengers on that train included Mark Twain, Thomas Edison, and Andrew Carnegie. And so we come to the end of the story, at least as far as I know it. Did you guess that the story of this special relationship between Hennessy and Black American community would go all the way back to 1896? If there is more that you can add, I'd love to know more, so please leave any additions you might have in the comments. In any case, I hope you enjoyed learning a little about this fascinating history. Thank you so much for watching. If you've not yet already done so, please be sure to like and subscribe, as it really does help me to keep making more videos. Until next time, bye for now.